Clara Brooks had a way of walking that made people think she always knew where she was going, even when she didn't. At 24, she was halfway between reckless and careful, old enough to know that love could bruise, young enough to still chase it anyway. Her short, curly dark hair framed a face that looked permanently amused by life. She was a graphic designer by trade, a collector of odd moments by temperament. Tuesday nights were her favorite time to scroll through dating apps. They felt less desperate than weekends. Everyone who messaged on a Tuesday, she thought, was looking for conversation rather than validation. That's when Eli Harden appeared on her screen. His first line wasn't a compliment or a pickup attempt. It was a question: if you had to invent a brand new kind of date, what would it be? Clara paused, impressed. Most people opened with a tired, "Hey." She typed back, "Depends. How weird can I get?" The weirder, the better. I collect odd first date stories. Then buckle up, she wrote. My date would have to include two things: trust and surprise. Something that makes you a little scared but mostly alive. Eli's reply came after a heartbeat. Challenge accepted. Trust and surprise. I'm thinking blindfolds? Clara laughed aloud in her apartment. Blindfolds? Sounds suspicious already. Not that kind of suspicious, he answered quickly. Something symbolic. Like a trust exercise. They kept building on the idea, volleying suggestions back and forth like kids inventing rules for a new game. Maybe they'd draw portraits of each other blindfolded. Maybe they'd order dinner for the other person without knowing what it was. The conversation bounced with imagination until Eli typed, "Here's a thought. What about a blind cut?" Clara frowned at the screen. Blind cut? Meaning? She wrote. We meet at a barbershop, he explained. Each of us gets a turn wearing a blindfold while the other gives us a haircut. Nothing dangerous, obviously. Just symbolic. A leap of trust. We see the results only when the blindfold comes off. It was ridiculous, totally unorthodox, possibly disastrous, which made it perfect. Deal, she wrote before she could overthink it. Beneath the banter, though, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in months. Excitement. She had gone on so many safe dates, coffee shops, movies, polite conversations that faded before dessert. This one had edges. Saturday arrived sunny and cool, the kind of spring day that smells faintly of new beginnings. Clara stood in front of the mirror, studying her reflection. Her curls framed her face, playful and defiant. You're really doing this, she told herself. It's only hair. It grows back. And it's just a date, right? The barbershop sat on a quiet corner downtown, sandwiched between a record store and a cafe that smelled of cinnamon. Its window read Marco's Studio, where trust meets style. She hadn't noticed that tagline in the photo, and now it made her grin. Maybe fate had a sense of humor. Through the glass, she saw Eli immediately. He was leaning against the counter, two coffees in hand, chatting with an older man in a checkered vest, presumably Marco himself. In person, Eli looked both familiar and new. His smile was easy, his posture relaxed, and his hair, ironically, looked like it had already survived several experiments. When he saw her, his face lit up. Clara? The one and only, she said, stepping inside. He handed her a cup. Latte, extra cinnamon. Your profile mentioned it once. She blinked. You actually read that far? I do my research before potentially ruining someone's hairstyle. Marco chuckled behind the counter. So you're the brave couple doing my first official blind cut challenge. I have waivers. Eli groaned. Clara laughed. Of course you do. The shop itself felt like a movie set. Tiled floor, chrome mirrors, leather chairs that gleamed under warm lights. On the back wall hung a small sign that read simply, Blind Cut. Marco handed them each a form. Rules are simple, he said. One at a time. No pranks that involve glue or dye. And remember, the goal is fun, not perfection. Eli glanced at Clara. Ready? As I'll ever be. They decided Clara would go first. Marco ushered her toward a chair that looked too regal for its purpose. "Sit here, close your eyes, breathe," he said kindly. He draped a glossy black cape around her shoulders. The fabric caught the light like liquid glass. Across her chest, silver letters spelled "blind cut." Clara felt the cape's weight settle, oddly comforting. Eli adjusted the blindfold, careful not to catch her curls. Darkness bloomed, soft and complete. "Can you see anything?" he asked. "Only my questionable life choices," she quipped. "Perfect." She heard the shuffle of feet, the rustle of tools. Then the room filled with sounds. Scissors clicking, a faint electric hum. Somewhere nearby, the cafe's doorbell chimed, and a whiff of coffee drifted in. Inside the darkness, her senses expanded. She could feel the air move as Eli circled behind her, hear the nervous laugh he tried to hide. The first touch, a gentle combing motion, made her shoulders relax. "Still okay?" he murmured. "Better than okay," she said truthfully. The not knowing was strange but thrilling, like riding a roller coaster blindfolded. They joked as he worked. Every snip sounded like punctuation in their conversation. She pictured pieces of her old caution falling away with each one. Time blurred. She stopped caring what she would look like. When the sounds ceased, Marco spoke softly. "Moment of truth?" Eli hesitated. "Ready?" Clara nodded. The blindfold slid off, light flooding her vision. She blinked at the mirror and gasped. It wasn't a disaster at all. Her hair framed her face more closely now, curls playful and free. A few uneven strands gave it a carefree charm. She looked lighter. "Well?" Eli asked, nervous. Clara grinned. "You didn't ruin me." Marco clapped his hands. "Not bad for amateurs." Switch places. Eli stared at Clara's reflection for a long moment, genuinely amazed. Her hair was shorter now, the curls arranged in a halo around her face. The change had softened her expression somehow. She looked brighter, more spontaneous, like someone who had just walked out of a storm laughing instead of hiding from it. Clara brushed a loose curl from her forehead, examining the uneven but endearing handiwork. "You know," she said, twisting a strand between her fingers, "I think this is the first haircut I've ever had that actually feels like me." Eli blinked. "Really?" "Because I was 90% sure you'd sue me." "All right," Clara said, standing. "Your turn, brave man." Eli mock-sighed. "I was afraid you'd remember that part." "Come on, sit." "Don't chicken out now." Marco handed her a fresh blindfold and another black PVC cape, identical to the one she'd worn. She fastened it around his neck, tugging playfully at the strap until he protested. "Careful." "I need that neck to hold up my terrified head." "Relax," Clara said, adjusting the blindfold carefully over his eyes. "Trust me." He smiled faintly beneath the fabric. "I already do." She had never cut anyone's hair in her life, but as she ran the comb through his strands, she found a rhythm. Gentle, exploratory, almost meditative. Eli's hair was thicker than hers, warm under her fingertips. "So," she said after a minute, "any last words before I transform you?" "Just tell my barber I loved him," Eli said. Clara laughed, a full and easy laugh that made him grin even though he couldn't see her. "You're not making this easier, you know?" "You're doing great." "I can tell because I haven't felt any blood yet." She trimmed tentatively at first, following the guidance of her hands rather than her eyes. Each snip felt like a tiny victory. Slowly, confidence replaced hesitation. At one point, Marco leaned in to whisper, "You've got good instincts." "Light touch. That's the trick." "Guess I'm a natural," she said softly. The minutes stretched. There was something deeply peaceful about the act. Not just cutting hair, but the silent agreement between them. "I won't hurt you. I'll take care. Trust me." When she finally set the scissors down, she realized her pulse had steadied. "All right," she said, stepping back. Moment of truth. Marco removed the blindfold with the same slow care as before. Eli blinked, eyes adjusting to the light. His hand went automatically to his head, fingers exploring the new shape. The mirror showed a slightly uneven but undeniably handsome cut. His hair was shorter on the sides, textured on top, the kind of imperfection that looked deliberate. "Well," he said after a moment, "it's not terrible." Clara gasped in mock outrage. "Not terrible? That's your review?" He grinned. "Okay, fine. It's great. I look like I just walked out of a very exclusive salon run by a slightly reckless artist." "Better," she said, arms crossed but smiling. Marco clapped again. "You two might start a trend." Eli looked at her reflection beside his own. "Guess we match now. Two victims of our own dare." Clara tilted her head. "Not victims. Adventurers." They left Marco's shop into a late afternoon haze. The sunlight painted everything gold. Even the sidewalks seemed to glow. The tension of the dare had melted into a shared buoyancy. "Well," Clara said, "that was officially the weirdest first date I've ever had." Eli chuckled. "And possibly the best one I've ever invented." They walked aimlessly, drawn by the rhythm of the city. Every so often, she caught him glancing her way, still half in disbelief. "What?" she asked. "Just, you really went for it. Most people would have backed out." Clara shrugged. "I think I needed to do something that scared me a little." He smiled. "I get that." They stopped outside a tiny cafe strung with fairy lights. The smell of roasted beans and cinnamon drifted out, the same scent that had hovered around the barbershop. "Coffee?" he asked. "Only if you promise not to suggest another blindfold activity afterward." "No promises," he said,